So I want to share my experience because I don't think this is something I could have learned by trying to study it unless it was just the right time for that. I had kind of two experiences, and I'm going to go with the most recent one. But to give you a good example, I believe that duality perception is when a person is rooted in a black or white type of mentality, meaning it has to be this way or that way. There's no gray, there's no other options, there's no in between. And it may not seem so extreme as that, but it is. And it tends to be around certain topics that a person will kind of think about in their mind. Even thinking about topics like God. Well, if God's all powerful, then this should have never happened. And it's almost like when a person goes there, they immediately, and if they say that, they have immediately limited themselves and blocked themselves from being able to see all these other possibilities, all these other realms. I want to give you an example of what I had. I was thinking about a concept, and I would say my entire life, I've always thought, well, you know, God is, everything. If in my belief source, God is everything, nothing can exist outside of God. It is also everything that is God as well. It has God's spark of consciousness in it. In order for it to exist, even if someone seems so disconnected, you can never be separated from source. It's actually impossible. So there were many things that I had somewhat of a dualistic perception on, kind of like it could be anything that you've convinced yourself of or that you just believe. But to give you a good example, how about the fact that a person could create new life from its own conscious field? Like, let's say your body or your consciousness energy body. Let's say you were going to be like God and you wanted to create a world kind of like the planet Earth. So you're going to take parts of your consciousness and then go create this world. Now, typically dualistic thinking exists in 3D and it tends to kind of match linearity. So people would then say, well, if you take this out, then you're losing this. That's a very good example of duality. Now, the fourth dimension and higher is exactly not that because everything is eternal. There's no life and death. Okay, so all of the mental filters, the perceptions, thoughts, programs that have been ingrained in your brain, in your synapses, you know, come from a certain framework or set of experiences or other people conditioning for you to think in these kind of dualistic ways. But so my experience was I've come to understand things much greater than the way I used to think. And it literally was like, let's say my thoughts were just a straight line. Well, one day, I was thinking, okay, it has to be like this or whatever. It has to match this line. But one day I just poked through it because of an experience I had here that allowed me to think differently and actually have an aha moment and realize that this was wrong or limited and not the only way things can go. So once I was able to see that, and I really was able to understand that, okay, this is what the duality was about. And the reality, I may not know all of it, but I do know that what I was thinking here was not as expansive as when I had this kind of new thought and this new idea, which got confirmed. Not everyone's going to have this type of experience, but you know, in essence, I have a really easy way to explain this. Everything is possible. Number one. Number two, you don't have to understand it. So these are really big things that you want to put in your mind. You don't have to understand it. Your brain does not have to cognate it. Anything is possible, whether after death, before. I have my own spiritual beliefs. I don't believe we die. We are eternal beings with souls. When the body dies, we move on. So, you know, some people might be stuck right there, but if you're here, you're probably not. So, the easiest way for me to give you a quick, you know, bing, bang, boom explanation and solution is this. Here's the definition of duality. Duality is when you are stuck slash limited, and this is for duality perception. Duality perception is when you are stuck or limited in a polarized means of perception or perceiving things, unable to perceive beyond the two beliefs, this line, just these set of things, or two beliefs, or unable to see the multitude of other possibilities, all this area up here, perceptions or probabilities due to a lack of knowledge, mental programming, collective programming, or external interferences or forces that have conditioned your mind to see a certain way. So yes, it is about breaking outside the box. Sometimes you need to know that you have a box. You have to see the box. That's where it can be kind of challenging. But if you have the drive and the interest to just want to know, you've already broken out, because that is not a part of the 3D constructs. People wanting to grow, to expand, to know more. It means you already have a sense that there is more. If you have a sense, that means you know that. And that means inside of your soul, your consciousness, somewhere, a part of you knows what you're trying to also bring in consciously. So you've already won the game. If you go from this space, and here's the answer to how to live in a non-dual way, or to begin that process, you must believe and understand that anything is possible. Duality perception is rooted in limitation or limits, as well as lack mentality, and not allowing oneself to be able to see outside of the box. I've done a lot of spiritual practices. I've come a long way. I've got probably 42 years, 41, kind of forgot. I would say an eternal 33. But I truly have come to believe anything is possible. Now, I'm not always going out in my life and just thinking, every time I have a thought construct or some things I need to figure out, I'm not just, pushing into my mind, okay, don't think that way because anything's possible. No, that's not how it works. But if you are trying to understand something and you're getting stuck in understanding it, that's a good time to kind of just throw away what you think you know. The one rule I tend to go by is the one thing I know is that I don't know. Now, good example of duality perception right here. A person who's maybe in a dualistic mind state would say, well, that means you don't know. So how can you learn anything? How can you allow yourself to think this, that? Because you just told yourself that you don't know. Hence thinking that just because I may think that way, that is either, it means that everything I believe or everything I do is going to be just that, or the opposite of it. When the reality is, I do think that way, but I'm also able to know, and I'm also able to grow, and I'm also able, it's all about expansion. You got to think big. You got to think, it's kind of like unity consciousness. If you're used to just one-off ratios, start thinking exponentially. Start believing in anything, believing in believing, and you'll easily break through. I'm going to put this up so you guys can read it. And I just want to leave you with a couple things to help reprogram your mind. When you're thinking about things and you're getting stuck on things and trying to understand, or just working on expanding your own consciousness, start saying to yourself, it can work. If you're trying to grasp a concept, it is possible. This way of me thinking about it this way, it's possible. And, another thing I would say, be okay with not needing to understand it logically. Just know that everything is possible. I think quantum physics has a proof on that somewhere, that everything is possible in the quantum world. So that's the same here. And